Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster. My name is Gaius Bowling, and we have another packed episode for you this week, which has kind of been the
It
case the
doesn't
last few
stop,
weeks.
Gaius. It never
I know
does.
it does not stop. It's so much fun though, because like at first it was like, well, should we cover this much or should we split up episodes? But we've actually done a good job of like kind of fitting like all the like hot topicy stuff that people want us to talk about with kind of like
hmm
these specialized like focus episodes that we also want to kind of give attention as well. With this week, we do have some hot topics to talk about, but we're also doing this episode as a 10th anniversary episode for Cabin in the Woods because it turns 10 on April 13th this week. And we didn't want to just talk about it with just us. Sometimes when there's a movie like this, we want to get other people on who are fans of it. So thankfully, Twitter is a good place to go. And we found someone
is
that.
it? Well, I would say it usually is. Sometimes you can dive into the deep depths of Twitter, but luckily we found a good guest to be on. So, Kevin, thanks for being here. Would love for you to kind of introduce yourself and let everyone who's listening know a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, awesome. My name is Kevin the Critic. I've been writing film reviews since I was about 10 years old, and in 2015 I decided to put them on a blog called kevinthecritic.com, where you can find all of my work there, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My Facebook and Instagram are Kevin the Critic, and my Twitter is at Kevin underscore the Critic. And you know, in my most recent tweet is going to anger some diehard Marvel fans, but that's
Oh,
okay.
God. Oh,
Well, no, but that's the thing. I'm a diehard Marvel fan too, but I'm one of the ones that's like, we can criticize it. It's okay.
Well, if it
yeah,
was
yeah.
about Morbius, you should listen to our last episode. We went in on it too. So,
Oh well, no, that's the thing. I dug Morbius okay. Like, I didn't think it was I didn't think it was awful, like 17%, but I was like, this is fun. I'm not gonna remember this in like a week, but I didn't like. I had enough fun watching it. Like, I don't. I like when I think of worst comic book movies, I'm like Superman 4 or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
true.
that, or
There
like
are some.
Catwoman. Where
Yeah.
so I'm watching this like, this is competent mostly. Like, I don't
it's
like
it's a
like.
when
movie.
you put it in that perspective, I guess.
One of the thing, I had fun to watch. Like, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I was like, I don't think it's as bad as most people are saying it is.
Fair
That's fair.
enough.
That's fair.
It's
And,
it,
every,
it,
and
it was yeah, it was okay.
it's
So
everyone's
you've been
entitled to.
writing since you were 15. I was going to ask, do you have maybe a top two of reviews that you've kind of written recently? Not recently, but over the last however many years. I mean, gosh,
Uh,
you've probably written 1,000 of them at this point.
um, I don't I don't know like what my favorite reviews would be. I recently wrote one for Turning Red,
I
which
read that
was
one.
fun. That was fun to write. Like, that was fun to write, kind of just navigating like, here's what I liked and here's what I didn't, and
Yeah,
stating it in a way that was like, this is what I mean. And
exactly.
then just I just enjoy writing most of them. Like, even the negative reviews, I'm like, okay, at least I can talk about what I didn't like about this, or try and make it funny or something.
Yeah, I
There you
agree.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, I try.
I don't take pride in like writing bad reviews. Like some people think it's fun to like to write a negative review, and like I think a part of me thinks about like all the time that does go into making a movie, whether or not it turns out good or not. Is
Yeah,
another thing. But I
I'm
do know
sure
that
for the
I do.
jobs,
But yeah, but I do know that some people do enjoy writing bad reviews. Like they love kind of like
yeah, I like
throwing a film in
trashing
the
it.
fire.
they love to hate.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and with my thing is, occasionally, if a film is so bad for me on like a majority of levels, then I'll have fun with it. But most of the time these days, unless a film is like so bad it's hilarious, I don't enjoy writing bad reviews as much. I'm like, I get people worked on this. Nobody wants to make a bad movie, and I don't hold it against the creators. I'm like, hey, look, I'm not gonna hate you guys personally because you made a movie that I didn't like. You tried your best. It didn't work for me. Maybe it works for somebody else. I'm just giving my opinion, And, I've gotten into, conversations with people about certain movies where it's like, I really, really hated this for whatever reason. And they're like, oh, I enjoyed it for these reasons. And so I saw like what the other side saw. I'm like, okay, I appreciate that you got these things out of it that I didn't.
I love that perspective.
Yeah, and that's a healthy film debate actually, because it doesn't always go that way, especially on Twitter.
Oh,
It turns
no.
into
No.
like a fight, as if we have personal stakes in the making of all these movies.
Oh,
Um, it's
yeah.
ridiculous.
Like yeah. And again, that's why when I saw Morbius and I was like, oh man, I'm actually enjoying this. Like
You're
not
like ready.
ironically, it's I'm unironically enjoying Morbius. Like, am I gonna get it? Am I gonna get like? And nobody got on to me about it. It was like, oh, good.
You're like, thank God, because it could have gone.
Thank God.
It could have gone a completely different way, with people being like, "Why did you like that?" Yeah,
Is Disney paying you?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
Disney.
exactly.
No,
It's Sony paying you. Yeah, it's that. Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
no. Disney's not paying me. And there have been films of theirs that I have given more mixed reviews to, where I was like, yeah, I didn't love this, guys. Sorry.
Sorry. Well, of course, Kevin talked about all the platforms that he's on, but we will also link all of them in the description for this episode, so you can find his blog and then find him on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those fun places. So you can also follow his stuff there as well. So let's get into it. I want to get it out of the way because we've been talking about Will Smith the last.
Can this
2
be
weeks.
the last time, Gaius, that we talk about Will Smith?
Yeah, I think this is gonna. I think this is gonna be the last thing, because that can happen at this point to him. Even though he resigned from the Academy made it clear that they were gonna still pursue disciplinary measures against him, and we didn't know what they were until Friday. And Friday, they decided that he is banned from attending the Oscars and Academy events for the next decade. So 10 years, he can't go. He can't go to any events. Um, Speaking as someone that was like triggered by what he did when I first saw it, and was kind of like, oh, he's a piece of shit. And that was my initial, feelings about it. When I heard about this punishment, or their punishment or whatever, it felt a tad excessive to me to make it 10 years. I thought they were going to do like a year or maybe 2. And it seems like a lot of people are feeling that way, or it might be a little bit mixed. Some people think that there are some people out there that still think they should take his Oscar away, and that's not going to happen. But I guess I would ask. I'll throw it to Kevin first as your guest. Like, do you think it was the right punishment, or is it too excessive?
My, I think that a 10-year ban is a bit much. Like, I don't like. I think that I would think like maybe like a 1 to 2 year ban would have been a little bit more apt, because it was like 8 seconds. Like, he just walked, and I saw the clip of it, and I saw the Australian clip of it where it was like uncensored, and so I saw what he actually said. Yeah, I'd say like probably a 2 year ban would have been more like fitting for that, given that it was in front of everybody, and then he started like cussing it, and then he like cussed him out. Like, it's not something that I'm like, oh, ban him for a decade. Like, I thought action definitely needed to be taken, because if it wasn't, that would have opened up Pandora's box of issues. But I think a 10-year ban for what he did is a bit overzealous.
If you think that 10-year ban is excessive or not.
Yeah, so I'll put it in the perspective of this. So when the Astros got caught cheating in the World Series, they didn't take their ring away. So all of them got to continue to be World Series champions. Not really any of them got bans for cheating or anything like that. There was just a few fines and stuff like that. So that really doesn't set a precedent for what cheating should be in the MLB. So I think what the Oscars is trying to do with this is basically say this behavior is clearly unacceptable, and just have a massive deterrent for any bad behavior on anything. And unfortunately, Will Smith is the example for that. It's like when you are at a job and you kind of have a fuck up, someone's going to be put to example and get in trouble for it. And unfortunately, he's the only one who's kind of done something like this, but they have to set a precedent where you can't do something like this. So I think that it really just puts anyone who's even considering doing something like this, not even at the Oscars, but to comedians, to any type of live show, assault in general. I think that it's just a very good way of saying this is completely unacceptable behavior for a Hollywood elite. It's completely unacceptable behavior for a person, especially in a very public space. I think 10 years, they probably were trying to figure out whether or not it was going to be 5 or 10. You're going to do a round number, set it, and say, listen, this is it. Sorry, don't come, not allowed, can't do that kind of shit, and we'll see you in 10 years. So I think that at the end of the day, it seems harsh, but what he did was unacceptable. So in my opinion, I think that it's well-deserved, and he's got a lot of work to do on himself. And and also with his relationship with Jada. I know, Gaius, I've seen you post some stuff on Facebook, on Facebook where it's like, it's might be time to put that prenup into effect.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I do have to wonder like what the I've often wondered about like what goes on in the Smith family because if you look at like if you look at like the history of like what they've done over the past 10 years, like they started out the 2010s trying to promote Jaden Smith up to be like the next big A-lister with the Karate Kid and After Earth, and that didn't really
After
pan
Earth was
out.
terrible.
And then, oh no!
Yeah.
See, the other thing, I didn't see it because I saw articles saying that like it lost box office stuff after like within 3 days it went from the number 1 spot to the number 3 spot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never seen word of mouth go by that fast. But yeah, like they tried to put Jaden as like the new big guy, and then that didn't pan out. And they tried to put Willow as like a music star with the "Whip My Hair Back and Forth" song, and that just blew up in their face. And it's just like I don't know. They're an interesting phenomenon as a Hollywood family to me. Of like, wow, we're famous. We're trying to make sure all our kids are famous too. And I have to wonder if this is the result of some kind of boiling point that may have been going on for a while. Of like, okay, maybe Jada Pinkett Smith is really really sensitive about that, which I would understand. But it's like I don't know. It's an interesting event in the Smiths family history.
Yeah, I was told because I posted that picture. We're not friends on Facebook, Kevin, but I posted a picture of him and of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, and I said like, yeah, now after the Academy ban kind of came out, I was like, maybe it's time that you consider like divorcing your wife because like she seems to be like a big part of the problem. Now there were a lot of people on that thread that supported it, but then someone said like they didn't exactly like demonizing her either, and that we don't really know what goes on in their home. And I get that, but I keep going back to this is that they've made so many crucial parts of their lives very public, and there's shit that we wouldn't know about if she didn't have a show that like is the very essence of it is like, let me tell you all of our secrets basically, and like let's hash it out in a public forum. So like that's why it's kind of hard for me to kind of like sympathize with her, because I personally don't. I'm hearing stories that she, she's supporting Will the best way she knows how, and she doesn't condone what he did. But if you watch like different angles from that night, she didn't try to stop him from running on stage. She laughed after he slapped him in the face. There was no like, babe, why'd you do that or anything. Like there was nothing that she did that stopped it. So that's why I guess I'm still like, yeah, she's not an innocent little waif and all this. But I do understand not wanting to demonize her, because on the other end of that, I don't love cancel culture either, and I don't think that he should be canceled either. I mean, I think what's happening to him professionally at the moment is what is expected, and it's going to be like that the rest of the year probably. He'll have some stuff that's on pause, and then by the time we hit the end of 2022, early 2023, I think that he'll be fine again, because there's going to be something else that'll take this place of like whatever the scandal is. There'll be a new one that takes this place.
And also, like I've seen, like Netflix is like apparently like scuttling away from 2 projects they had with him.
Yeah, and Sony as well with Bad Boys.
And I was like, oh, Bad Boy, he got Bad Boys yanked too.
Yeah, for now, until they figure out what's it.
Well, and that I get why they're doing that, but I personally probably would have waited until like seeing like what's the verdict on this thing before like pulling out. Just because I don't know, it seems like a little bit of a slight overreaction on the studio's part to me to pull out in the midst of all this happening. It's like you don't even know what the punishment's going to be yet.
Right.
So this thing could blow over in like maybe 3 6 months when another Hollywood star screws up or says something or does something that gets even more attention than this, and people forget about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like he has like that Apple movie that is supposed to come out by the end of the year. That could very well be an Oscar player. They probably like the thing is a lot of people were confused. They were like, "Well, he can't be nominated anymore, right?" I'm like, "No, he could still be nominated. He just couldn't go if he was nominated." I don't think the members of the Academy, even if they felt he gave like one of the best performances of like the year, would nominate him this year. Um, but he is still able to be nominated in the future if that was the case. A lot of people are looking to what SAG is going to do because they said they're going to do something too. I don't know if they kind of think like what the Academy did. That's enough, and we'll kind of leave him be, and like that's fine. But their union also spoke out when it first happened that they wanted to wait and see what the Academy did before they did anything. And so far, they haven't said anything. I kind of hope they don't add on to this at this point because I think at this point he knows he gets it. He's suffering the way that he probably should suffer right now, which is like critically in the press in his pocketbook. It's going to affect his persona for like the foreseeable future, and then he'll come out at the end of it eventually. But he has to kind of take his lumps like everyone else that has gone through
Yeah,
this kind of stuff.
yeah, and ironically, like my sister got me his autobiography for Christmas, and so I'm interested to start reading that and see
In
if
the
there's
wake of all
anything
this
left
stuff.
over. Well, no, that's the thing. Like, I want to read about like okay, so now that we've seen the facade break, it's like all right, I want to see like all right, what's in this book where he's going to reveal things about himself that we might not know. Like all right, will it give a better picture of who he really is beyond the the image
The
that he
Fresh
puts
Prince.
out? Yeah, beyond
Yeah,
like the Fresh Prince, beyond Agent J. It's like that was his persona for years and years and years and years and years, and now people know that, and it's
yep,
like they have to reckon like he's a human being, you guys. Like human beings are flawed. They do stuff. They do things they shouldn't
Yeah,
do.
but his fuck up was so public and so I mean
Yeah,
just in front of millions of people to another famous person in the
yeah.
on the biggest stage possible. So I think
Oh,
his
yeah.
punishment is maybe a little harsh, but I think it's well deserved to keep anyone from even trying something like that again. So I think that like
yeah,
this whole Will Smith stuff is it obviously keeps progressing each week. Like Gaius, we've talked about it now this 3 weeks in a row, and hopefully we don't hear anything more that's kind of like, all right, maybe he's gotten into more trouble or anything. I just hope that from here it seems like he's hit. Obviously, it's not rock bottom, but it's pretty close to. It's probably the furthest he's ever been to rock bottom, and so hopefully the only thing is on the way up.
yeah. Whatever's left, it will be a comeback, hopefully, and he can take some time to chill and reflect and come back better than ever. And and like I dig a redemption story. So if he can come back from it and learn something from it and become a bigger person from it, then I'm all for that too. Um, so I would love a positive into this. But I think this will be the last time we're talking about it because I don't know if there's going to be anything else that'll happen at this point. I mean, unless we find out what happens with his movie Emancipation with Apple, like, um, but yeah, it's will be to be continued, and hopefully it won't continue anytime soon. We can like put it to bed for a little bit before something else happens. But speaking of other celebrities who are kind of in trouble, who could have taken his place, uh, so when this story broke, I thought it was just a generic story about like an actor that got too drunk and he got arrested, and then that was it. But Ezra Miller, who plays the Flash in the DCEU, he was arrested in Hawaii. He was at a karaoke bar, and apparently he got like so angry at the people that were doing karaoke, he like snatched like the microphone from one of the girls, started cursing at them, made like a big scene at this karaoke bar. he was arrested and then released on like $500 bond, right? So I thought that was it. I was like, all right,
I want to
well,
know
he
what
had a drunken
song
night.
they were singing. What,
Yeah, what were they
like, was
saying,
it just
man?
were they singing Tequila or something, like something that's so bad, or like what sparked this
I would love it.
aggression?
Like, what is it like? I would love it when they sing like "Funky Cold Medina," and he was like, "No."
No. Yeah, that was the funny part of the story to me at first when I was like, wait, he was just
Yeah.
so triggered by their karaoke that he just like
You guys suck.
stormed the stage.
You guys, it's like in School of Rock, like we see the guy texting his buddy, "These guys suck." He didn't go onto the stage.
Yeah,
And be like,
Or
stop.
it's one of those where
Yeah.
like there's a group of friends, there's like 10 of them, and they all pick the same song in a row or something. I mean, that would piss me off.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
that's what it was.
Oh yeah, yeah, it would. But anyway.
So like from what this story goes on, I thought, okay, that's it. Whatever. He got drunk. It happens. But then I find out last week that Warner Brothers reportedly is having these emergency meetings about what to do about him because he is their Flash right now. The movie's not coming out until next year. Now that they delayed it.
Well, Gaius, actually,
but-
after he got arrested, he was arrested again because after he got
Yeah.
on bail, he broke into the hotel of this girl and her husband and basically called her a fucking slut and like assaulted them basically, and then was arrested again.
Yeah, his exact words were, "I will bury you and your slut wife," according to a temporary restraining order request obtained by Page Six.
Like he got out
in
of
fact,
jail and
he-
went back to harass him again.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand this guy because it like every few years I feel like I read something like this is the second time something like this has happened. Like a couple years ago, I remember it was a big story that he apparently choked out a fan.
That was
or
last year
something.
in Iceland, and that kind of flew under the
Okay.
radar. That flew under the radar too. Like, I mean, I saw it, and like I know on
Yeah,
our
I
site
saw that.
they wouldn't let us post about it on our site because a lot of major publications didn't pick it up because they couldn't tell if it was serious or if it was a joke. And if you watch the video, I guess it can go both ways. Where it's like, okay, this might be serious, or it could be just a weird stupid video that he just put out. But in the wake of all this, I think everyone knows that it was serious, and apparently, and they also said after that he was also the subject of 10 police calls in less than a month, and he also, by the way, I should call. He also allegedly stole a passport and wallet.
Okay,
which
stealing a
included Social
passport's a
Security
freaking
card.
felony, isn't it? Like,
I think I don't know.
Yeah, and so the big thing now is now all these reports are coming out that while Ezra Miller was filming The Flash, that he had moments on set where he lost it, and they said that he never got violent, but he had moments where clearly something was up, which is why they're having these emergency meetings now. Now the thing is, like, there's nothing they can do about the movie. It's already shot and it's already done. It's coming out next year no matter what. It's just a matter of what do they do with Miller after this. Like, is it something where they're like, okay, let's get this guy the help that he needs and like see what we can do, or do they cut their losses and recast after this movie comes out?
Well, and the other thing is they're in bed twice with him because not only is he their Flash, but he's a major character in their Fantastic Beasts franchise right now, and the third one of that comes out, I believe, next week on the 15th, or this week, on the 15th. And that's supposed to be a 5-film series. Now I don't know if they're going to make it to 5 films. We'll have to see how this one performs and all that. But yeah, he's in 2 of their biggest franchises right now. And so if they want to distance themselves from him, which is understandable, then they're going to have to recast on 2 major franchises, which for Fantastic Beasts also happened with the Johnny Depp situation.
Yeah, they've already gone through
if they recast him again, I mean, that whole franchise is just up because it just seems. I mean, that's too many recastings. I mean, you really just can't kind of come back from that. I mean, people will be confused, and like it just, or you just basically kill him off and say, hey, in the beginning of the next one, just be like, hey, so this character doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
Well, and ironically, they did that exact thing in the Crimes of Grindelwald, where in the first Fantastic Beasts movie, because I watched the first one the night before the second one came out, just to catch myself up, and I was like, oh, Ezra Miller's character is like dead. And in the beginning of the second movie, they're like, he survived. And I was like, but
Okay.
how? How? He was like dead. I saw him die. What do you mean he's just back now? So this franchise can kill off whoever they want, however they want. They've proven it.
And it must be interesting for Warner Brothers because Ezra Miller, like, he's attached to two big franchises that they are a part of, and I assume the emergency meeting is just not about the Flash. It probably is about Fantastic Beasts and like,
Yeah, it has
okay,
to
like
be.
this actor is like a major part of these franchises. And you know what was interesting when these stories broke? Twitter, because Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash on
On
TV
the
on the
TV show.
CW on the TV show, he started trending on Twitter, and then the whole situation started trending on Twitter because they were like, just replace Ezra Miller with Grant Gustin. A lot of people at the time when they announced the movies, like that they were doing Justice League and they were casting Ezra Miller as a Flash, they were like, well, why not use like the established TV actor who has a fan base and just like bring him into the movies? But I guess they want to keep that separate, but like, you know, now everyone who wanted that in the beginning, they're like, well, see, we told you so. Just bring in Grant Gustin
Well,
and let him be the Flash.
yeah. Well, see, the problem with doing that is that the Arrowverse is its own thing with its own established continuity and versions of these characters. And in the Flash movie, we're supposed to be introduced to the DC Extended Universe's version of Supergirl. And the Arrowverse already has a Supergirl and Melissa Benoist, who just finished her run. And so, like, as I think Grant Gustin's a good Flash, but like, if you make that canon to the DCEU, it would require at least two movies worth of explaining how all the Arrowverse stuff that was never meant to exist here now ties in to the
That's
movies.
too much work.
Yeah.
It's far too
Yeah,
much
so
work.
that's yeah, so
But at the
exactly.
same
Like,
time,
that's
like,
why
would
they
you rather
can't.
do that,
They
or
can't.
would you rather have people be assaulted on set?
Well, I would honestly rather recast him than have someone be in an unsafe working environment on the set of a movie. But yeah, like, recast this guy. It's happened. Like, recasts happen for a variety of reasons. If it's an unsafe working environment and he's causing it, then yeah, I say ditch him.
Yeah, and I know they stress that Ezra Miller never got violent on set. But he just had moments where he was losing it on set. And of course, it's so crazy that these stories didn't come out until after his arrest and all that. No one was really talking about his behavior on set until recently. Um, but you know, like I I say maybe give it time to kind of see like if Miller can like turn it around. You know, like it can like make it like and get better because I know it's going to be a headache for the fucking studio to like release that movie in 2023, and if Ezra Miller is still all like messed up, then they have to recast the part. But they have to wait until after that movie comes out because they can't refilm what they've already done.
No,
They're going to lose a lot of money
a
if they're
lot
going
of
to lose a lot
money.
of money if they do that.
No, and they've been trying. And not only, like, they've been trying to make this specific Flash movie for about 15 years. Like, they've gone through so many scripts and directors and all this stuff. So this is the movie that they have to
Well, also, Gaius, like what
release.
we've talked about too, is that apparently this Flash movie is supposed to tie everything together. So if they do this one wrong, then it's just going to be a whole fuck up for the rest of their movies that they've planned.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, a part of me wants to be like, okay, well, let's see if Ezra Miller can get the help he needs, and maybe he can recover from this, and then uh, he'll be fine. But like, you know, reading all this stuff in a row, as like even before Owen, like when Owen got to, I was going to go to that part next, and then I was like, yeah, the whole story as it progressed, like after that first day, I was like, yo, he just got arrested at a karaoke bar, and I was like, no, it was way more than that afterwards. Like he just
It
like
was so much worse.
Flew off the rails.
all over a bad karaoke song. All over
You know,
singing "Don't
maybe
Stop Believing" at the karaoke bar or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
gosh,
it's almost like you almost wish you could use the Speed Force to go back in time and tell him, "Don't do it."
well,
Like,
I
come
think that
on,
it
like,
just
don't.
seems like he's obviously got some issues that he needs to work through as well. I do feel for the guy. I mean, anytime someone has some serious outbursts like that, it just kind of proves that there's probably something going on behind the scenes that he needs help with. So I do feel for the guy in that aspect, but it's like after whatever it is, this is probably his fourth or fifth offense in the last 2 years. Like you got to get a grip, man. Like you can't just take this off the chin. You got to get the help you need, and you obviously can't let it affect because he's about to lose everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean Warner Brothers keeps getting hit with their universes. Like both the DCEU and the Harry Potter verse have been like one bit of like production controversy after another. Almost every single film in their universe is hit with like some kind of something before release that kind of damages the perception around it for a while. I mean, it is fascinating to watch all this having play out with the studio over the past like 5 or 6 years.
I feel bad for Warner Brothers, honestly.
Yeah, it makes me not want to be a studio exec and be like,
no.
again.
I don't. Like, I would never. Like I like. What do you mean? What do you mean our producers are being terrible? What do you mean our actors are having breakdowns? What do you mean? Like the fans hate it, but we just spent $250 million on.
You get that in the middle of the night. It's Hawaii time. Probably got to call in the middle of the night. They're like, yeah, so Ezra just like needs to get out of jail. And they're like, are you freaking serious, man? Are you serious?
We keep getting hit. Everyone hated Wonder Woman 84 except for like 8 people. So, like, and I was one of those 8 people that didn't hate it. But it was like I saw so many people dunking on that. It was like I feel so bad for DC. Every single one of their movies has like the most hyperbolic reactions given to.
Yeah, they really do.
It's like, dude, people are super passionate about these movies. I'm like, I'm happy you're passionate, but like, chill. A movie can just be okay.
Yeah, for DC,
and that's perfectly fine.
I guess that's a good point because for DC, it's either like really good or it's absolute shit.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, like, and there was a time where I was in the it's either really great or terrible camp of DC movie thinking, and then I was like, no, let's actually be fair to these things. Like, I think all their movies, regardless of what I feel about them, overall have good elements in them. Like they're not all complete. The bad ones are not all complete dumpster fires to me, and the good ones are not flawless masterpieces.
Yep.
It's like, okay, yeah, I just try. It's like, yeah, like people get really into the superhero thing, and I'm into superhero stuff too. Like I've got a Captain America shield, Stan Lee hanging on my wall. But it's like, yeah, but it's like, I understand like. These are movies we can have calm discussions about, like, are they good or are they bad or passionate ones. It's not like you didn't understand it.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite criticism. You just didn't get it. Like, okay.
No, that's the thing. Like I've seen so many people be like, people don't understand what DC's doing. Like, no, they understand it. They just don't like some of it. Like, that's okay for people not to like things.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Like,
yeah,
I understand everything that's going on in Man of Steel and BVS, and I even like some of it. I just don't like other things that they're doing in it, and that's fine. I'm friends with people online who are massive fans of those, and I'm like, hey, I'm happy you get something out of these that I don't.
Yeah, and like the whole and because of that Discovery Warner Brothers merger, I was looking on Twitter, and like the Restore the Snyderverse started trending again. Because like all those people who were like against it are like out, and so they have all these new people.
Oh my god!
So I was like, you got your movie, just let it be. Like you got your 4 hour like.
4 hour.
Your opus. You got it.
Man.
So like,
here's the thing. I went into that opus, and I was like, hey, you know what? For 3.5 hours of this movie, I liked it. And then you had 25 minutes of scenes from movies that will never happen. Right. And so my rating went because I think my rating was going to be like, wow, he actually did it. He managed to make something that I'm going to Oh no! 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 Okay, 3.5. Sorry, you just completely.
I think he just kind of upset fan. I mean, not upset them because like they weren't going to get any of those story arcs at all.
listen, I felt bad for the fans. Like, he cheated them. He went back to reshoot those things, and I'm like, you know as well as anyone, you're not getting to make these movies, and so putting these in here for the fans to just tease them, I think, is a bad decision on your part.
Yeah, and they certainly did tease them
Snyder-
because now they're all just like
Snyder fans love it.
they do.
Man, I know they love it, and my favorite thing that came out of that was like all of the. This is the best Batman Joker conversation we've ever received, and I was just like,
No,
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 it's not. I've like I haven't even seen that much of Batman the Animated Series, but I'm like, I can think of a couple conversations that are better written than this.
That's true, and that don't have Jared Leto in them. So,
No, the thing, like, Jared Leto's Joker, I enjoy as an enigma of who looked at this and thought it was a good idea.
who approved this? Who approved this?
Some drunk guy at the
Yeah.
table, just like, what if we had him as like a mafia leader?
What if we have him as like a cool bro with damage across his forehead and all these tattoos that you'll never see, and this purple open shirt jacket and all the bling.
Yeah.
It's like the Joker. You're trying to make him cool, like, but why?
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes done there. Well, I mean, hopefully they figure this all out, and Ezra Miller figures all his stuff out too, and we have we have another like to be continued moment with that story too, because don't know where that's going to head.
We don't.
Hopefully we'll find out soon. But I will talk about something that's a little happier in the industry because I saw Sonic the Hedgehog 2 yesterday, and
I saw it Friday,
and it was really good. I was like a little long. Like, it was over 2 hours. That seems unnecessary for like a movie aimed at younger people.
Feature.
But
it's live action anime, but it's aimed at kids personally.
Yeah, so like I saw it on Sunday with my little brother. It was the first time I've been to a theater with a bunch of children in like forever. It was packed with kids, and there was a lot of crying babies and a lot of kids talking. But once I got through all that, it was pretty good. And you know, when I did the box office predictions for this, I called it at 55 million for its opening weekend. But then someone was like, "You're underestimating it." I think because like when the first one came out, it came out a month before all the theaters and stuff shut down because of COVID, and it opened to like 58 million when it opened in February 2020, and this one like way exceeded it and opened to $71 million this weekend.
Families need a movie to go see.
Yeah, it does. They do, and this one's fun. I mean, and in that one fell swoop, it's the highest opening weekend for a video game adaptation, and and its predecessor was the previous highest opening for a video game adaptation. This is the highest opening for Jim Carrey's career, which is crazy too. I didn't know that till I read it, but like his previous highest opening was 68 million for Bruce Almighty, and the audience really likes it. It has like a 97% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It has an A cinema score from opening day moviegoers. It seems like everyone critics thought it was okay. It has like a 68% fresh rating, which is like kind of low, but good for that kind of movie. And I think if you're a fan of the games and you're a fan of like that character in general, it was just like a fun little movie, and there were some cool little references to the video games as well. And then I think bringing in Tails and Knuckles, and it was like fan service done right. Yeah, and I think it was like a perfect storm of like you said, like families needed a movie to see, and it also kind of appeals to not just young kids but like people who grew up playing the game. So it kind of like had like all these different pockets that you could like satisfy.
Well, also too, I mean, Sonic was such an older game. It's like, I mean, our generation and generations above us were playing Sonic, and so I feel like a lot of younger kids now they never really played that game. So to them, he's just a really cool character, and so like kind of reintroducing Sonic as not necessarily just a video game character, but just like a lovable character in general. And he's always kind of had this quick wit, and I think Ben Schwartz was such a perfect choice for it because I've been watching Ben Schwartz since he used to do YouTube sketch comedy. If you guys have ever seen,
Yeah.
you guys need to go back. If you've never seen Jake and Amir, he used to do like little cameos for that, and he is just absolutely hilarious and just always loved everything he's done. Obviously, part of his Parks and Rec character, John Ralphio, he just does such a good job in everything that he does, and so to have that voice, I just love the fact that he's kind of gotten this moment as sort of his big break to make a lot of money, but also to have a character that is kind of his and also makes a lot of money for him and people really enjoy. So it's just something that is dear to my heart just from the fact that I love Ben Schwartz. So really glad for him. James Marsden, he's good in everything. So I guess, yeah, good for him. And then good for Jim Carrey. So I'm just really happy that this is done well. Kids really like it, which I think is good because there's a lot of kids movies out there. I think Wreck-It Ralph is probably the last one I can think of that kind of blew up in this way, that kind of created a character or took another character and just kind of made it into something that became a phenomenon. So really glad to see that for the next generation of children out there who now get to probably play some of their old parents' games.
Yeah, and I guess so I'm guessing like both of you guys are like old style gamers who have like played a lot of his.
I mean, I used to. I grew up on Sonic. I mean, I don't play video games much anymore or at all anymore. But I grew up on Sonic the Hedgehog. The second one being especially a favorite because I can remember distinctly like being gifted that like my parents bought it for me, and I remember getting it on Sega Genesis, and then them introducing Tails and that, and then I remember getting I think the third one. And then Sonic and Knuckles had like you could connect the third one to Sonic and Knuckles, and you could actually like play levels on Sonic 3 and on Sonic and Knuckles. So like, I remember all that growing up. So it definitely kind of hits like a certain nostalgia part for me. Like I thought it was cool that they put on Twitter today that this movie was like #1 in such a big way, and it was like 30 years after like the second one had like become the fastest selling video game of that year. Of 1992, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, from the place where I come at with this franchise is that like I have like I have friends who play Sonic the Hedgehog. Like I'll watch them play it on Twitch, and I'll talk to them, and so I'm familiar somewhat with the Sonic stuff. I had like the Mega CD collection on my GameCube when I was a kid, with like all the games on it, but I didn't play many of them. So I'm coming at these like, how do these function as movies in their own right? And what I like about them is that they're approachable to a general audience of like, hey, if you've never played a Sonic video game before, you can enjoy this if you can go with it. And like that, like with the first movie, like I liked that. And with this movie, with the second movie, I thought it was an improvement in certain ways from the first one. Again, I liked the first one a lot. This one I thought had a lot better action in it.
Yeah,
like the action was bigger and better, and better shot. I felt like they were more confident this time about how bizarre and weird we can go with our story and how many game elements we can put in here without losing people. And I thought it was a really great move to bring in Colleen O'Shaughnessy to play Tails again.
The voice of Tails,
because not only do you have somebody who's done this character for a long time and who knows she knows what she's doing, but you also throw a bone to the fans of like, we're not just going to recast everybody that you love to get a new like famous voice actors, which I know is kind of that's a little bit of a thing right now of like, why are you recasting all these people when the voice actors are still here?
Right.
I thought she was probably like the standout vocal performance of it next to Ben Schwartz. And I also think that I like the human actors they got. I like that they're into it. They're not just doing it for money or for their kids. It's like, hey, they want to be here. They're giving good performances. They're having a fun time. And it's enjoyable for me it was very enjoyable for me as like a 27-year-old man to sit in that theater with a bunch of families and kids who were laughing together. And I'm like, that's great. We need more of this.
Yeah, once I got over all like the baby crying and the yelling.
Oh yeah,
I actually did.
No.
I did enjoy that part too. I actually thought that it was a cool like collective experience that like, I mean, these kids were loving every aspect of it. They were like, they were like enamored by it. And you brought up something interesting about like the human characters, which usually in a movie like this, sometimes that stuff doesn't work that well. It's just kind of boring, and you're waiting to get back to like the animated stuff. But
Uh-huh.
James Marsden, like Tika Sumpter, Jim Carrey, they all do a really good job of selling the
This
believability of
world.
being in that world and like being immersed in it and not acting like they're acting against like something that isn't there. Like
Well,
they're very much invested and involved in it. And I thought all the stuff at the wedding was hilarious. That was just
oh
mainly
my
them.
god,
Like
that wedding stuff, that I loved it. Like, I didn't recognize Shamar Moore until the credits came in, but Shamar Moore plays her sister's husband, and I was
yeah,
like, yes, you're
yeah,
off of
like,
Criminal Minds. You're actually in a real movie.
yeah, yeah, it was cool to kind of see all that, and like I agree with the whole Ben Schwartz thing because like he's fully embraced voicing this character, and you can tell that he really
Yeah.
loves doing it, and he actually like kind of like brings I think more so in this one he wanted to bring more of his personality into it and kind of like
Yeah, he did.
improvise a bit and you could kind of tell that he did that. And I think most importantly though, the movie has like a lot of heart and it's funny
Uh,
and there's a lot of action. And I wanted to comment on Idris Elba really quick because at first I was like,
yeah,
why did they
yeah,
cast him to voice
he.
Knuckles, right? But there were certain moments that they really use Knuckles as like the straight man that doesn't understand like yeah, he's like very stoic and he's all about honor. So like there are a lot of jokes about like how he doesn't quite understand like why is Sonic always acting so funny. So like his
Yeah,
voice was perfect for that.
yeah,
But it takes some growing into it. At first, I was like, I don't know if I like this, but then they
yeah,
started,
me too.
but then they started playing in on the jokes of him being like basically like an old like curmudgeon that like who's like trained and Sonic's not. So they played into that really well. I thought,
Well,
which I thought was kind of funny.
yeah, I was a little bit mixed on him throughout. Like, I thought there were moments where he shined, and then I thought there were moments where I was like, okay, he's not the most experienced voice actor. There might be a few moments of like, okay, this is kind of one note stoicism you're doing, and Sonic, I will kill you. It's
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of that.
there's a lot of like, all right, you're gonna keep playing that song, but and I thought it got better as it went on, and I ultimately liked where they took him, like
Yeah,
where they took his character. I thought at the end of it, the last scene that we have with him was his funniest line. I thought the way like that last scene with yeah the last
with
scene with him, I
with
thought he was hilarious.
the ice cream and the baseball and all that. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was all really,
that was his funniest bit to me.
that was really funny. And they already greenlit a third one, and there's already a Knuckles
A
spin-off series
spin-off.
that's going to Paramount Plus. So given the
Yeah.
fact that it's made so much money already, and you can tell there's an end credit scene. They
Oh
are
yeah,
building
no,
they are building a universe. You can tell, but
yeah,
at least they're having fun with it. So
yeah.
I can forgive the whole like, all right, you guys are trying to build this whole like Sonic thing. It's not too over the top where it's like, oh, it's pretentious. Like it's
No.
clearly fun and they're having a good time and like they're definitely doing all this for like the fans of the games and like either you discovered it from watching the movies or you played them when you were a kid. Like you
Well,
could tell that that's what they're kind of feeding into, and I respect that and it works.
yeah, yeah, it was fun. Like, I went, yeah, I'm happy. I'm very happy that this franchise exists in the way it does, and that it's kind of riding its own very weird tide right now, and just being a fun, like, family oriented, you know, a fun family oriented thing that
Yeah,
kids can enjoy for like all the action and the antics with the animals, and the adults can enjoy the writing of it.
and like
And this it's
and
a good like all thing.
yeah, and hot take right now, just because reviews for Fantastic Beasts are like kind of mixed. They're like it's like it has like a 59% on Rotten
Oh yeah.
Tomatoes. I have like a slight belief that Sonic can still be number one next week, and Fantastic Beasts debuts in second. Just because
I believe
I
it
don't know how
too.
much hype is like there, and like there seems to be like all this extra hype that people didn't know Sonic kind of had heading into this weekend because
Don't discount Harry
$71 million
Potter,
is
man.
what's
Don't discount Harry Potter fans, bro.
Well, no, well, they say I don't. Well, I don't know. I'm very interested to see how Fantastic Beasts does, because this that franchise has been mixed, like in terms of reception from everyone on day one. There are some people that
yeah.
love it. Some people are like, whatever. I mean, I'm seeing it just because of how odd the last one was. I'm like, I kind of have to see what you want to do after that. Like even if I end up not liking it, I'm like I have to see at least one more, and if I end up hating this one, then I'm
Then
done.
you're gonna tap out. Oh,
Yeah, because I'm done. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I gave you 3 movies to win me over, and you just
and
didn't.
you failed. Oh,
You failed.
I do want to point this out too because we talked about like how much Morbius was going to fall this weekend, and I thought I was being generous. I said 65%, but then like people spoke with their wallets, and it fell 74% from last weekend, down to 10.2
Oh.
million. It'll be lucky to make its production budget in the States. Now overseas, it's doing all right. It's not doing great, but I would just hope that like this makes Sony like have a meeting and go like, yo, we can't just like assembly line crank these things out. Like they have to be good. And I'm really kind of like I really don't support a film's failure, but something like Morbius, which I just think they should have tried harder and done better. I think you need to it needs to be hit like that so they understand that like fans just won't accept anything.
Well, yeah, and like it's just I think the whole idea of them doing a like Spider-Man villain verse, this is a concept. I like the concept of it, but it's like you guys have made 3 like mid-tier B movies at this point starring Spider-Man characters.
Yeah.
Like that's all right, but you're not going to hold weight for much longer unless you make one that is like legitimately really really good, like crowd pleasing. It doesn't make a lot of like people actually like it, they want to return to it, tell their friends go and see this because it's really good. They
Yep.
haven't had that yet.
Yeah, not at all. And you know, it's kind of speaking with the box office. You know, I was also surprised because I won't stay on this too long, but I saw Ambulance as well this weekend and thought it was really
Yeah, I did
good.
too.
I was really
Yeah, I did
surprised
too.
that it flopped this weekend. It only made like $8.7 million. But I think it was Variety wrote an interesting story. I think it was Variety that basically said that they think that streamers like Netflix have like kind of killed like the traditional action movie on the big screen. Like they think that Ambulance would have been better suited at home
Oh yeah,
rather than
Yeah,
we
it
saw it
would have
with
on.
been
Extraction.
well,
Yeah,
they would.
yeah,
I think if Ambulance had been a Netflix release with with Michael Bay's name and Six Underground having been a huge success for them, it's like, look, man. As much as I hate, non-IP movies all going to streamers now, it's like this would have done gangbusters this weekend if you launched it
I
on
agree.
Netflix. I know that's a fact.
I would have
yeah.
seen it.
And
It's
I
like,
was surprised. I was surprised. I mean, like now it's the lowest opening for a Michael Bay movie ever, which is
uh,
crazy. And this is like lower scale Michael Bay. It's only a
yeah,
$40 million movie,
40.
so it's
Oh
not even
wow.
expensive by his standard.
Well, no, and that's the thing. Like, I know people will like it because, like, I saw it in an audience that had 4 people in it, including myself, and the 2 people sitting in my row, we were looking at each other, laughing at so many moments of this. Like, dude, that was so awesome! Oh my god, they actually just did that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I know that there's an audience for this movie. They're just not going to go out to theaters to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
yep. And and it's unfortunate too because we always give Michael Bay shit for not making like traditionally good movies, and this one gets good reviews and no one sees it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I thought this one was a. I thought this one. I have some quibbles about like the last third of it going too much, but like for the most part, I thought this was a. I thought that this was Michael Bay making a movie that actually answered a lot of criticisms that Michael Bay movies usually get. Of like, okay, we're not like sexualizing every woman like a car ad anymore. We're not treating all minority characters like stereotypes as much
yep.
anymore. We're not doing like there's explosive stuff, but you can tell what's happening. Like
It's not
there's
all
actual
quick cuts. Yeah.
yeah, like there's actual character dynamics at play here. I'm like, what have you done with my Michael Bay? Is this really the same one? Really, I think it is a substantial improvement for him as a director that he took this script on, and I hope that he makes more movies in this vein.
Well, yeah, but I honestly think once it goes to like video on demand and if it lands on like a streaming service, I think it will do better at home. Like, because I was just so surprised that like the male demographic's been coming out for movies, and I was just really surprised that they didn't respond to this. But then I read that article and was like, oh, maybe it is like you're getting stuff like Extraction and Red Notice on Netflix. Like maybe you don't really need maybe it's a harder sell to sell these movies on the big screen now. They need like a bigger hook.
Well,
basically.
yeah, and, and Jake Gyllenhaal's had a few movies on Netflix that have done well now.
I
So
thought The
maybe,
Guilty was really good. It was definitely not necessarily the setting that I expected, but I thought he's been really good in everything that he's been in recently.
yeah, I haven't seen The Guilty yet, but it's on my watch list. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
I also feel bad for Yahya Abdul-Mateen and Eliza Gonzalez, who are just kind of coming up. It's like I think they're really good. I think that he's a really promising young star, and from this, she seems really promising as well. So I hope that they can get. I hope that they can gain more traction and get in more projects because they're really good.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing I'm going to spend just a short thing on, just because I was just surprised by it happening, but I shouldn't be surprised with anything that Vin Diesel does. I was just like, and I didn't even see this like on the Hollywood Reporter. I was just like scrolling through my Instagram, and I see this picture of him and Brie Larson together, and I was like, oh, that's cool. They know each other, whatever. and, and then I read the caption, and he basically that's how he announced that she's in Fast 10,
So
and I was
weird, man. He's such a weird
Awesome.
promoter.
He's, he's an awesome guy. Like, hey, here's me and my new co-star. We're in
And
Furious
they're like,
10
wait,
together.
what?
like,
Just so casual.
and I was like, I was so confused by it that I couldn't even tell if it was a real story. And I was like, oh, it is. Because then she posted it on hers. And I was like, all right, well, I mean, he does a good job of being like, oh, I'm going to get Jason Momoa. I'm going to get Brie Larson. And like, he knows how to generate like hype, I guess. But it just came out of nowhere. We don't know who she's playing. But I think it's kind of cool. I think at this point, I think we have 3 Oscar winners who have been attached to this franchise. It's like Charlize Theron, Helen Mirren, and now Brie Larson. So that doesn't mean like, if you have no, he hasn't. I thought he had, but he hasn't.
Okay,
So
no.
it's interesting that he can pull in these like Oscar winning people, these people that would probably never touch this franchise like 10 years ago, and like
Yeah.
now they're all about it. And like at this point, I don't really care who she plays. I like Brie Larson. Like when we wrote this story for Joe Blow, there are people that don't like her and they're triggered by her
I feel like
for
she gets a
whatever
bad
reasons.
rap no matter what. Like, there's some diehard haters out
Yeah.
there of Brie Larson.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
whatever like she steps outside. Oh my God, Brie Larson. It's like, dude, like if you disagree with something she says or does, that's fine. But like, it's almost like this woman breathing the air gets some people offended. It's like, come on, wait until
yeah,
she does something. Like if she does
Yeah, she hasn't
something
done
that is
anything
legitimately
wrong.
like worth anger. I mean, but yeah, like it's entertaining to me reading these like, oh my God, why is Brie Larson in this thing? Takes it's like she's probably gonna do fine. They
yeah.
cast really well.
They're
Like
they're
everyone
still
who's been in these movies is fun. Like
they're
she'll be
they're no
it'll be great.
they're still just all upset about Captain Marvel, and then she speaks her
Ugh.
mind. Like heaven forbid that she speak her mind.
Yeah,
But
they
yeah,
were
I
so
knew as soon as I
sensitive.
posted, yeah, as
Well,
soon as
yeah,
I
like
posted it, I
people,
was like, oh god, here we go.
Here we
I
go.
just wait for the
well, no,
comments in the
like people, yeah, I remember the Captain Marvel debacle was hilarious. I remember that, and I saw it. I'm like, okay, I get why some people don't like this movie, but I dug it. I liked her in it.
yeah,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was like, we don't need this much hate over one
Yeah.
person who hasn't done anything remotely to deserve it.
yep. Well, I wanted to happen to the Cabin of Woods stuff, but I want to get Owen's take a little bit first because I know he has to like hop off soon to do some adulting. Um, but Cabin in the Woods came out. By the time you hear this episode, it'll be 10 years ago.
Hmm.
It was supposed to come out. It was supposed to come out a lot earlier than that because it was like shot in like 2009, and then like MGM actually had the rights to it, but then like there were some issues with like money and all that stuff, so it kind of they shelved it indefinitely, and then Lionsgate finally bought it and had like a surprise screening of it in 2011, and then it opened wide on April 13th, 2012. Um, the good news scenario with that is by the time that it opened in 2012, Chris Hemsworth, who wasn't known at all when he was initially cast, uh, had been in like Star Trek at that point, and then like Thor.
Hmm.
So by the time that it came out in 2012, it was like, oh, it's that guy from like the new guy
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
Marvel
yeah.
movies, and then and then he ends up in of course the Avengers comes out the next month in May.
Hmm.
So like the timing for it kind of worked out as far as if you're gonna like be shelved for a while, like at least come out in that way. Um, but it came out 10 years ago. It was best viewed as something that like it was good to go into it not knowing what it
Hmm.
was, and like my initial thought of it when I saw previews and all the posters and like just the title. I was like, all right, this is just going to be a typical like slasher movie,
Yeah.
kids in the woods, a nice homage to like 80s slasher movies. But then it's just
not at all.
it's so much. It's so much more. It's so much more than that. It kind of plays with all those like genre tropes a bit, and in a really fun way. Like if you're a horror fan, you're like, all right, I get it. But I also don't think you need to really be one in general to enjoy it. There's just so much fun stuff that they do with it. I think it kind of owes a debt a little bit to kind of like Scream and stuff being successful, because it kind of shows that like you can be kind of funny and you can be meta and all that stuff. Written by Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard. Joss Whedon is someone that we've talked about a lot on here, despite how like the man we know him as now. Like he was a huge creative force behind like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this movie, The Avengers. He's a very intelligent writer. Drew Goddard also directed this. Also a very good director and writer. They've worked together before on Buffy, so they had like a good second hand already with each other. But yeah, I'll get Owen's take on it first, and then Kevin and I can go into more stuff after that. But I am curious to see like what was it like when you first saw it, and were you surprised by it when you first saw it?
Yeah, no, when I first saw it, it was definitely like I had no idea what to expect going in, and I think that this movie just has like it really made me realize that horror movies are kind of one of the only ones you can kind of go meta with. Like you don't really see like a sort of meta action movie where it makes fun of all the different tropes, but horror movies like this one just does a perfect job of setting the stage with the jock and his girlfriend and the stoner and all of these characters that just come like with a horror movie, and it's like, well, they're gonna act like idiots or they're gonna make poor decisions, and the people behind the scenes know that, and so like it just has this perfect dynamic of those tropes, but also does it, I think, in a better way sometimes than Scream, just because it gives an actual laughability to it, where you do kind of have like, oh, this realization moment where it's like, oh my gosh, that is hilarious, but it's not necessarily a laugh out loud one. And I think the actor who plays, gosh, the only thing I can ever reference him as is the dad in Step Brothers.
Richard Jenkins.
Yeah, so
Jenkins.
It's just like his performance is so good, because as things start to kind of go off the rails, I think that his reactions to that are just so good, where it's like, what, just fuck it, let's just do everything, and let's just kind of let's just kind of go after it. But I think that it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, sort of meta horror movie, and that just produces a bunch of laughs and also just a really great story that just keeps you on the edge of your seat no matter what part of the movie it's in. But I appreciate I do have to hop off here. Got a day tomorrow, so I just wanted to give my input, but just want to say thanks again, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conversation. It's been it's definitely a great movie, so I can't wait to hear the playback and hear what you have to say, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
And we'll see you next week, Owen. Next week's our stoner episode. Perfect. Next week for 420. So yeah, we'll be excited to have Owen back for that. But yeah, me and Kevin will continue the conversation, and thank you, Owen, for being on as long as you have been, knowing that you have important shit to do. So I appreciate it.
There we go. You got it.
Peace out. Oh yeah, so like, it's funny because like, you brought up the Richard Jenkins thing, which I thought, one of my favorite moments is when they realize that the plan is not working in Japan. and then he just like goes to the screen and he's just like, fuck you, like he's like so mad.
And that's the thing, like even like working, so I guess kind of like even like working backwards from that, like when I remember the hype for this. Like I remember back in 2012, this was like the most anticipated horror movie. Joss Whedon's attached, and that Thor guy is in it, and all of this, like, horror is it's been in this stage of like remakes and torture porn and all this kind of stuff. And this was the one that to me, I think kind of like reinvigorated the genre for people of like, wow, you can actually do something
Right.
with
Different.
this setup again that hasn't really been done on this scale before, and so I appreciate for that. I went into it knowing that it was like going to be something crazy. I didn't know what that crazy was. So the way that it opens, I was like, wait, what?
Like, what the hell's
What are
going
we
on?
doing? What the hell? Like, why are we with these two business guys? And then, like, I really like how in the beginning of it, it is like, it is really light and really funny and just really kind of jokey, and you like these characters a ton, and
Yeah.
you know, you just getting with them, and then the tension and the gore slowly build over time with it. Like I
Well,
just
like, yeah,
appreciate.
I think the first 30 minutes kind of builds up on the whole like cliches of like horror movies of the 80s, where you first you have all the stereotypes, like he mentioned, like you have like the jock and his like promiscuous girlfriend, or like yeah,
Oh
and then
my
like
god!
and then you have like then you have like the virginal character, right? And then like what they call
Yeah,
like, and then they call the stoner the fool in this, and then
yeah,
like and then the what was it, the intellect or whatever. So you had all
yeah.
those like all those stereotypes, and they really do kind of, as you're getting to know them, because you do start to care about them, because they're likable enough in the beginning that you're like, all right, I'm
Well,
invested in like what goes on with them,
yeah, yeah.
and like
You like them.
and so like I was impressed like with that, and then like because it's, I think it's almost like past the 30-minute mark before anything like happens, like
Uh,
something's up, and that they're kind of in this world that you're not sure what's going on, because like when they're driving along the road towards the beginning, and then that bird flies and it hits like the force field thing that's around,
yeah,
and,
the
and
shield.
yeah, and that's when you're like, oh, this is something completely, this is not what I think it's going to be. This is not about
No.
a bunch of kids getting murdered in a cabin, and it's not a slasher movie. um
Well,
yeah, and I loved also that it kind of picks different types of really cool horror movies to kind of pay homage to. There's a lot of like Evil Dead in there.
yeah,
Like,
evil. There's a ton of Evil Dead, and then like and was it like maybe like The Hills Have Eyes? They were
yeah,
like, oh, the cannibal people, or
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I love their little like horror monster board of ideas and like
yeah. That
bets,
board
and
was like, when I was
they
like
got a
reading the board, I
they
was
got
like,
a they got a betting pool of like who's gonna choose the object to like how they're gonna die, and they're like, oh, it's like a sports game.
yeah,
Like,
it was
how are they
like,
gonna get it?
like when that one girl is like, well, I picked zombies, and he's like, well, no, you didn't pick like, it's like redneck. I thought, yeah,
Redneck yodeling
like
zombies.
zombies, which is like a different level of zombie. But yeah, I thought that stuff was like really funny and really cool, and uh, just from like a horror movie like gore, just like really good, like
Oh man, the blood!
like practical effects and all that stuff. Like it's
Yeah,
also really well done in that regard. And I found out this today when I was like reading up on it. Heather Langenkamp, who played Nancy and like a
Nancy
Nightmare on
and
Elm
the
Street,
Nightmare. Yeah,
her husband is a special effects artist, which I didn't know. I didn't know that, but
what?
his company was the one that worked on Cabin in the Woods, which I thought was like really cool. That she that in a weird way that she got to be kind of involved in this kind of like
Uh,
horror film as well.
oh
But
yeah,
that's what her husband does for a living, and like his company worked on all the effects and gore effects on this film, which I thought was really cool. Like little tie in to like
yeah.
different horror
That's
movies.
that is very cool, and I think that the and yeah, like all of the like all of the kills in here, I think are very. I like that they're brutal. Like they don't hold back on the gore of this at all. I mean, it is a some of these people you're like, oh, that's a terrible way to go.
Yeah,
And then and and yeah, like the and I just like that I don't know the way that they play around with horror tropes and make it work for them. Like
yeah,
I think my favorite joke is like when when all the characters are like, okay, we're not going to split up. That's stupid.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then they pump
exactly.
that gas in like that. See,
Yeah,
that is one of my favorite horror tropes, like in a straight horror movie, because it's like y'all are just dumb.
yeah,
And so for them to play with it, I was actually yeah no that one, and then the other one is um we're gonna make the intelligent one dumb with her hair with her
yeah,
shampoo or something.
yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I love when they release the pheromones to make Chris Hemsworth and his girlfriend go out there to have sex so they can like separate them from the
Yeah.
group. And I thought that was really cool too when they like he's like, oh, we gotta stick together, and he was like, oh no, that's not gonna work. And then he like,
Yeah.
releases that stuff like, no, that doesn't make sense.
No.
We should split up. We can cover more ground. And they're like, what? Okay.
Yeah, no, and even there's a bunch of cool little things like that in there, and then like the picture in the main girl's room that's a camera or like a see-through painting thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, there's there's just so many cool details of like how they make this premise work, where you're like, that's ingenious.
yeah. And it's a credit to Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard, kind of what they
Yeah.
wrote, and like I watched some of like the special features because I watched it again today, and
Uh-huh.
how they talked about how they wrote it. They basically were like, let's do what we used to do. Let's go lock ourselves away, like somewhere far away, and like a whole weekend where we just write. We just crank this thing out. And they would get up at like they said 6 in the morning and write until like 1 in the morning. One person upstairs, one person downstairs, just cranking out like here's my part of the first act, and like, oh, here's my part of the first act. And then they would like print it
Uh-huh.
out like old school style, and like that's how they kind of came up with the whole thing. Like they were used to writing together, so they could write quickly and write something really fast. And they both had this like really good idea. Joss Whedon on that special features thing said that he wanted to
Yeah.
explore why do bad things happen to all these blonde girls, which that's been like his thing. That has been his thing
Yeah,
forever,
I've
right?
noticed like even since I remember like even in the first episode of Buffy, the first scene is like a blonde girl getting attacked. It's like,
Yeah.
what is your thing with blonde girls, man? Like I
Well,
don't understand.
now we know now that he has like if
Oh,
you look at
weird.
how he writes women in retrospect, even someone strong like Buffy, like he has a very interesting, complex, not all to their view of like women in his own right, and
Yeah,
that's just based on someone who is it seemed like he didn't get a lot of play when he was younger. He was kind of a nerd, and then he becomes this big writer and like develops this big TV show. Then he becomes like a substantial director. He gets involved with Marvel, and now he has all this power. And
yeah.
and then if you watch over time how he write, like I was even trying to how he wrote some of the women in here, he could kind of get away with it a little bit because they were playing the stereotypes, right? So they could kind of
Yeah,
like with the blonde girl, like who was supposed to be promiscuous. Well, that's the role she was supposed to play, and
yeah,
the virginal girl, also was supposed to kind of play like the nice one. So I guess he can kind of get away with like playing with those stereotypes a bit more than he would have if it was like a straight horror film. He was actually kind
yeah.
of like he was like, oh, I'm actually commenting on it rather than just like this is what I'm saying it
It's
is.
yeah, and I think even too like I also like too that like because normally in these things like the jock character or that character type to me a lot of times I don't like them the ones who's just there like hey let's party
Yeah,
let's just have sex or let's just do stupid. I'm like I can't wait for them to die. And so this time I liked how Chris Hemsworth played that, and I liked how that was written because he becomes more lung-headed as it goes on, very
yeah.
gradually. And it was like, okay, good. Like I like him, and you're making fun of this kind of character
They made him
as it
likable.
progresses. But they made him
Yeah,
like, and that's something a lot of these horror movies get wrong from that era. Is like I don't like the kids in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I don't like the Friday the 13th remake kids. It's like
because they're
you
all
want to
assholes.
like. I've only seen like the first 10 minutes of that, but I was like, I'm so happy you all died. But yeah, like, well, but only like in the Friday the 13th, it's kind of a fake out kind of deal.
Right, right.
But like, but yeah, like I'm so but yeah, like seeing horror movie characters in a slasher scenario who I actually like spending time with and who I care about is such a rarity. And so for this, I'm like, good, you answered my biggest criticism of these kind of movies.
Yeah, and that's honestly true of all of them. Even like I think they all they did a good job of making sure that you knew they were all friends, and
Mhm.
like there wasn't like that kind of tension that kind of arises because like the jock character is like picking on the nerd, and I like that they kind of made
Mhm.
jokes that like the jock was smart. and they gradually just made him dumber. They made him dumber, and that's how like they were like, no, something's not right. They all their personality things start to change based on like what these people wanted them to do. They're being like controlled like little puppets basically, and like I thought that was really cool that they kind of turned like those traditional like personalities on their head a bit, and they weren't like I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. No, it's in terms of that, I think it is one of the strongest horror movies of recent years. It's like, wow, you actually I think that it I think that if I think it definitely helps if you have seen at least one of the 80s slasher movies, you're at least partially aware of the trope that they're working with, because I think sometimes when he does stuff in here, it's very clearly homaging certain things like Evil Dead or like cannibal stuff or just like things like that. So if you haven't seen those things or are not aware of them, some of it might be, oh, this is weird that it went that way or they did that. But still, I think that he wrote something that was for the most part very accessible to people who just have a general understanding of horror and those who are major fans of it.
Yeah, and I also think kind of brave because I would think this would be a tough sell to like the general movie going public, and I think they figured out a way to really market it well, and kind of using the whole like a lot of it being used with Joss Whedon's name, and then of course by the time it comes out, because of all the delays, now Chris Hemsworth he's a little higher of a level now because he's been in this Marvel movie now. By the time Cabin in the Woods comes out. I was surprised to learn like it was successful when it came out. It opened at number one, like $14.8 million, and it made $42 million here and $66 million worldwide on a $24 million budget, and that was, based solely on like it being like clever, new, and unique.
Hello,
which I thought was really cool. So there. Oh, got you back.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it went out. Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah. But yeah, I just thought that the fact that it did so well, it was based on the fact that it was a unique and really cool idea that people like embraced a bit. And, even though it might have been a tough sell, like it ended up working. And I think this is one of the cases where like a delay really helps. Cause I don't know if this comes out in like 2010 as intended, I don't know if it hits as hard.
No, I don't think it does because again, I remember like I grew up in that, and I wasn't seeing these because I wasn't old enough to yet. But I remember growing up in that period where every horror movie was like, it's a jump scare fest, it's a gore fest, it's they're not making these things to like, they're just making these things as like we're trying to be Saw, we're trying to be like just whatever dark, grainy creature, what things. And I think in 2010, that was still kind of the norm. And so if it had come out then, I feel like in 2010, it would have gotten lost in the shuffle of horror things. And because I think that year, like The Wolfman came out and My Bloody Valentine 3D, I think 2 came out then. And so it might have gotten lost as like, oh, another one of these horror movies that they keep pumping out. But yeah, because of that delay and because of, Joss Whedon getting on the Avengers and because of Chris Hemsworth and his increased star power, I think it really bolstered the film and how successful it became.
Yeah, and and critics liked it too. I think it's like a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. And that's what you can tell when like they don't always embrace horror movies, but like they will when they're they're doing something a little bit different from like the norm. And everyone got the humor and everyone got what they were trying to do with it. And and horror comedy doesn't always work. It's a rough balance sometimes. And I'm not saying that this one is just like a straight comedy. It is more like a little bit more clever and more meta.
It's a horror. It's a horror film first with funny jokes in it.
Yeah, exactly. And and I think that's why it kind of does work. It finds like the right balance between both of those genres. I do want to ask you before we wrap up. I love the last 15 20 minutes of this movie because it gets so like shit crazy and like
That is, I I love the last act of this movie because they've built up. All right, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? And
Yeah,
the deaths have gotten increasingly gorier, and the monsters and all this, and then they just have an all-out monsters attack
yeah,
finale, and there's gore everywhere, and SWAT guys getting limbs torn off, and sea monsters. And then they bring out Sigourney Weaver
yeah.
to explain this.
Explain it all, which makes like perfect sense if you if you're like who else, because like, she has that like she has that delivery, right? Like she can
She's got
deliver
that.
like
She's got that kind of commanding presence where when she talks, you listen,
like
and you're
if
like,
you're gonna
and you'll buy anything.
if you're gonna have someone like explain what's going on, right? Because you're gonna have to have someone
Yeah,
spell. You have to have someone spell it out for the audience who's like, I don't know what's
yeah,
happening. So if you're gonna have someone
yeah.
do it, it should be Sigourney Weaver because like she really is a commanding presence. Like she can like handle any kind of dialogue,
Well,
and like even though some of that
yeah,
dialogue was ridiculous, where they're like, oh, it's like these like
these gods.
gods and all this stuff. But I was like, her delivery made me like go, okay, I can accept. I'm picking
Well,
up what you're putting
yeah,
down.
yeah. No, that it is so great how she says all this, how she spells all this out, and you're like, yeah, I
All
totally
right,
buy it.
I totally buy it. I totally
And
get
even
it.
it's in the last 2 minutes of the movie where this happens, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes the last 90 minutes completely make sense.
Yeah, and by the way,
because because
for a movie, oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, because yeah, like I'm happy they got her, and I'm happy that she was able to take it seriously and deliver that, because I feel like if you had a lesser actor or actress saying that, it could be
It
like
wouldn't work.
it would be stupid.
It
But
wouldn't work at
because
all.
you got somebody like her who can work with material like this and really understand it, like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, she completely legitimized this.
yeah, yeah, totally. And I when I was watching the special features today, like that was their only choice. They wanted her, and she was down. She was down to do it, and she had a lot of fun just showing up as like a fun cameo at the end. And
That's fine.
and I thought like uh the ending itself, which I have a friend because I have one friend that like hates like bleak endings like this
Oh
because like
yeah.
there was no way for it to really end, right? I mean, it was like what they said was going to
Yeah.
happen was going to happen. Um, but what got to me when I first saw it in theaters, and what still gets to me after I watched it today, that shot of the hand coming up
Oh,
and then like
dude.
coming, it was like I don't want to say it's scary, but it's like it's very visually like striking, where it kind of like you're like
It may
taken aback by it.
it it may be the most visually striking image that he's ever shot,
Yeah,
because yeah, it's like the end of the world is here, and they're just gonna have to, like, they're in it, like, there's no stopping it. It's very,
right.
yeah, it's like, all right, the last shot of the movie ever, and it's this. And then I always think about, okay, look where we started with two guys in the office talking about baby furniture, and it
Right.
ends with a giant hand coming out and
Yeah.
like smashing to black before the credits.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always just like, I was like, yo, this is how you depict the end of the world on a minimal budget, and and just for like a couple seconds, like you don't have like that image
No.
says so much without like having to do much at all. And like I remember when we
Yeah.
saw it on opening night, like we were all like, what the fuck just happened? And it just ends after that. But it's just so
Yeah.
it's such a visually like striking like moment. And like the build up to it is great too, because like there's all this silliness and stuff, right? But at the end of the day, you still care
Yeah.
about these two being like, okay, they're in this together. Like, all right, we're 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 ending this together. This is it. And
Yeah.
and she basically insinuates like maybe it's time for like a do over, like to reset all. Like she's not really like confident in humanity
No.
at the moment. So like she's like maybe this is how it's supposed to be. Like this is how it's supposed
Yeah.
to end, which I thought was like it's a bleak ending, but I think it works for like
Yeah.
I can't see
I
it
mean,
going any other way. I mean, I was just more
no.
surprised by. I was like, how are they going to visually show this? I was like, how are they going to like show the end, what the end of the world might
Well,
start to look like, and that
mm,
giant fucking hand is enough to make you
no,
go like,
it yeah, the giant, yeah, it I I have to admire how bleak that is, because we don't really get a lot of like mainstream films that end on such like a okay, the heroes have lost and it's a downer, but you're still entertained getting there. Like
Right.
sometimes I see movies like, oh, it's a downer ending and now I'm just depressed for no reason. And but this one was like, no, I had fun. I laughed. I was like creeped out by the gore.
Yeah.
And now I've reached this ending that I'm never gonna forget because you executed it
Yeah.
so perfectly. It's like, wow, what a way to go out on your
Yeah.
little cabin in the woods movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And just throw up that title card and like, all right, I'm picking up what you're putting down. This is pretty good. I
Yeah, I
loved
totally picked
everything they
I
did
totally
about that.
yeah, I totally picked it up.
Yeah. It was it I am it's funny too because I try to like suggest this movie to some people sometimes, and some people get it and they like it and they think it's funny. Um, I have some friends that don't. It has to be like a straightforward horror film from them to really like embrace it. Um,
Alright.
I think there's I don't think the meta stuff works for everyone. I think some people are like, oh,
No.
it's clear that they're like
Well,
homaging
yeah,
something,
and
so they're poking fun at
yeah,
something else.
yeah, and for me personally, I don't normally outside of this and Deadpool, I don't normally enjoy meta humor anymore
Right,
because so much of it is like, "Oh, look, it's like that movie, da 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 da."
like
They
wink,
don't
wink,
do
nudge,
that.
nudge.
Well, yeah, like, I don't like Community because
Yeah,
Community is so I respect people who like it. I don't like it because it's so much of them referencing other films and
other
shows so
stuff.
directly. It's like, "Oh my god." If I don't know what that is, there's no joke.
Exactly.
With this, because it's very broad and super general a lot of the time, like things that everybody knows who's into like pop culture or film, it's like, okay, you've got me here. Like I can think of a movie that's done this that you're making fun of or pointing out. It's not something very specific,
Yeah,
and I think that's where the meta ness of this one works where others fail.
yeah, I agree. And I kind of want to ask you too. Like, do you think that we're like because we're 10 years removed from it now? Do you think that this goes down as like a horror classic that will be appreciated? 10 years from now, like 20 years from now, is it going to be up there as like one of those ones that we point to as like, oh yeah, this was a definitive moment for the genre when it came out?
I I think it's going to be remembered very fondly. I think that it largely holds up because of the writing and because of how general the poking is and because of just like just how creative it is. Like we don't really get a ton of like 80s style horror things anymore, so maybe
Right,
some of that stuff might not be as well known. But I think in terms of like even if you don't get the humor as much, like if you just want a gore fest, you get that here. And
right.
so yeah, I think it's gonna hold up in as a horror classic for those who are into this kind of movie. Like it's a really great horror comedy love letter to the genre.
Yeah, I think so too. I honestly think it is one of the best horror movies released in the last 10 years. I mean, I think it,
I'd say I agree.
the 2000 this kind of period where this came out, I guess was a really weird time too for horror movies. Um,
Yeah,
but this one stands out in a really good way. And like I said, movies that get to like this didn't get delayed because it was bad. It wasn't like they have faith in it. It was the victim of like being at one studio and then like something going on there with like money and all that, and so it got shelved indefinitely until someone else bought it. And thankfully, Lionsgate stepped in and they bought it. And then it was a matter of like, how do we release it? And I think that was a good. I think the waiting was good. I think it was good to kind of be like,
yeah.
what do we have? How can we sell it? And
Well,
and they had to sell it
yeah.
based on like what everyone thought it would be. Like you're like, oh,
Yeah,
it's like yeah,
well, no, I remember the trailer was like, "You think you know the story,
yeah,
you think you know where it's going." It's like, "Oh yeah, okay." And then also they put like Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard's names all over it, and they're not showing like this was back in that time where not showing a lot could still work as a trailer mechanic
yep,
because like I remember there used to be trailers where it's like, I don't really know what this is about, but it looks intriguing and cool, so I want to find out. Whereas, like, you look at something like Tomorrowland, which tried that same tactic and it didn't work out because
Right.
people just didn't take to it. I like Tomorrowland. A lot of people didn't. But yeah, like that, I think that tactic back in 2012 of like, we're not going to show you behind the curtain. We're just going to hint at what this could be. That tactic sold it. And then also you've got like, doesn't, it's not, does Lionsgate distribute the Saws too?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good, like, yeah, I mean
You
they
know
have
what?
to
No,
get.
you know what? I think that they do because I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that they distributed the last one was Chris Rock, so I think that's their series. So
Okay.
they were associated
Oh, yeah,
too
they
with
do.
kind of
Yeah,
like
you're right.
horror.
You're right.
Yeah,
They are
yeah,
the saw.
yeah.
They the saw ties.
So yeah, Lionsgate is associated at that point with like grisly horror that's crowd pleasing, and so I think that helped too. They could sell it as like the next horror film from Lionsgate.
Yeah, and they can kind of use it, and it's actually poking fun at like a little bit like movies, at movies like Saw, like the whole like torture porn thing a little bit, and it's kind of like making a little bit of a joke out of that too. So like I just love that it fell into someone's lap that understood it and got it,
Yeah,
because like certain studios can kind of get this and be like, oh well, let's
we
just sell
don't
it
know
as
how
like
to
a slash,
do.
let's sell it as a slasher movie in the woods, and then like whatever when they see
Well,
what it really is, like
no, we don't. It's like when Universal got Krampus, and they marketed that. And I like that movie.
I
They
do too.
marketed that as a straight horror movie, and I saw it as a straight horror movie. And when I went to go see it, it's a horror comedy. I wasn't
Right.
expecting that, and I appreciated that it was a horror comedy. Like, thankfully, somebody told me that it
Yeah.
was funny, and I'm like, oh, I'm much more interested in it now because I like that genre mix. But yeah,
Right.
watching the trailer, like there is very little humor in there, or hint of humor,
Yeah.
and so I think that's why it might not. I mean, it was a big success, but I feel like the mismarketing of it as a straight horror film, sorry, it misled people, and so some might have stayed away that otherwise might have gone to go see it.
Yeah. I think that some people, I mean, or maybe some studios feel like if like the mix of those genres is hard to sell a little bit to a general
Yeah.
audience, and like so they either have to sell it like one way as like a pure horror film, and then because I remember looking, if you look back at like the trailer for Scream, like if you go to watch that 1996 trailer, it's a horror movie trailer. I mean, I can't really there. I mean, I guess you could tell from some of the dialogue there's going to be humor and stuff, but it's a slasher movie trailer, and like you don't really get how like funny and meta it's going to be until you actually watch it. Um,
Oh well, I've never seen. I saw the Scream. I've seen the Scream 2 trailer, and
right, and
that one
that one
was a
kind of
lot
leans
more
in
upfront.
that leans into the humor more than like the Scream trailer does. Because like now that we already know what the rules are, the first one's been successful. They can kind of like poke fun of like all the stuff they talked about in the first movie.
Um,
Um,
yeah, I mean, and that was the other thing that surprised me about the new Scream that came out. Well, that I saw those trailers, I was worried, like, oh no, they've completely lost the comedy of it.
yeah,
Oh God, all right, I guess I'll go see it. And I'm like, oh no, it's actually really funny,
they're like, no, they
and
got it. They totally got
they've
it. So
got it.
yeah,
They've got it, and they're commenting on like horror tropes, not as deeply, but they're coming on like horror stuff and modern things now,
yeah,
and
and
I
like
dug
fans and
that.
like how toxic fans can
Oh
be. Like
God,
I love like
oh
that
God,
stuff was really good.
oh God, like that fan stuff, that was so gratifying. It's like,
Yeah,
yes, thank God someone made fun of
they
this.
commented on it. Yeah, I
Oh
totally
yeah,
agree.
like that's the thing, like yeah, and so yeah, I was very happy with Scream 5 or Scream because we don't want to give them numbers anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard to sell us.
the new one, well, and the thing is, like, the new one's called Scream 6. So when they sell this, it's going to be like Scream, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream
Yeah,
4,
yeah,
Scream 6. You're like, wait, did you put the same one in here twice?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, but it's kind of cool. Like watching the success of Scream in 2022 was nice to see, because it's like that kind of horror genre of filmmaking is can still be done right, and people will still respond to it. Um, and then I think that's why even something like Cabin in the Woods, even 10 years later, like once people like see it and get it, they appreciate it. Like they're that like all the stuff that was like old then is becoming new again. So like I think if you were to show someone that wasn't into Cabin in the Woods like 10 years ago, let's just say that maybe they watched the new Scream and they're like, okay, well, this kind of humor is back a bit. And then you show Cabin in the Woods to them again today, they might perceive it a bit differently and like understand like what that movie actually was.
Yeah, and I think that I think that like the prevalence of more like meta humor that Scream, to my knowledge, kind of popularized. It's like, okay, because more people are aware of it now and its meaning, I think that like helped Scream 5 become popular. Like, we know that people in movies like this talk like this and are gonna reference things directly, like elevated horror and the requels and fan stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I think more people now are a bit more culturally aware of just how film is, which is why they could even get away with, we're gonna make a message that's like putting toxic fans down at all. Like when they went there, I was like, I did not expect you to do that.
Yeah, I was like, that's going to trigger a lot of Twitter people, man.
Oh no, and it did. I saw so many people that were like, "Oh my god, they hate fans." I'm like, you're literally proving the movie's point.
You're proving them right. You're proving them right. Yeah.
And then my favorite. I think my favorite joke in it was like, there's a shot of somebody watching a YouTube video of like why the stab movies are too political or something.
Basically woke.
Like too woke. Like one of those decordering videos. And you're like, yep, I saw videos like that and that actually popped up on this, so they got it right again.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Well, it's kind of, I want to bring this moment up because I was like cracking up because I forgot how funny it was. The scene where Chris Hemsworth has to do the motorcycle jump. And it's such a well written, like it's like what he's trying to say is like a typical thing of like what that those characters would do in that situation. Like, I'm going to go get help. I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to go do this. And then like the music starts to swell.
It's
like
badass punchy music.
It's like this badass moment, and then he does the jump. And at that point, I when I saw it in theaters, I had forgotten about the force field wall thing.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, oh cool. And then when he hits it, I was like, oh my god, like it's equal parts funny, or then like also sad, I guess. But it's like there's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, yeah, it's such a that's a great inversion because we've all seen that scene so many times of like, I'm gonna get help.
Yeah.
And then he or she gets killed. But to do that, it's like,
it's like such a heroic moment too. And I was like, and it's like the hit, and then their reaction to it is so like strong. They're like, oh my god, like, and then you just watch him fall, and like, and it's like, it's such a, I was trying to think like that might be my favorite moment in the movie, just based solely on like what it kind of is, what it's making fun of in that moment. But it's also written so well that it's like it could be also a real moment in that movie.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing. Like, they nailed it. They nailed everything in it, which is why, like, when I watch movies that are like kind of straight versions of that, like kids going off in the woods, I just kind of laugh now because I think of this. I'm like, oh, you're just playing this goofy thing straight.
Yep, exactly. Well, I want to thank you, Kevin, for coming on and not just talking about this movie, but then also joining us for like the news and stuff. Because I know it's
thank you.
All the pop culture stuff to kind of catch them on.
No, thank you so much for having me on at short notice. This is great.
No, I mean, like, we also love having guests on. I think what I want to do differently, because I always like when we have anniversary episodes, I always like wait and post like, oh, a week we're doing this. I think I'm just gonna start like posting like this is what's coming up in like the next few weeks, and like if anyone wants to jump on these, like we are more than willing to have you guys on. Like we've had like as many as like just one guest on like you, and then we've also had like 5 or 6 people on to talk about
Wow,
certain movies. So
cool.
it's always a good time, like, going through this list of like, what's turning 5, 10, 15, 20, like trying to pick like, all right, which one do we want to focus on? We had like a really good time with Grindhouse last week. We had a good
Oh
time
yeah.
with this one this week. So I'm glad that we actually had like a fan of the movie on to kind of talk about it and
Oh yeah.
revisit it.
I wonder. If you guys are still doing this in 10 years, I wonder if like you're gonna do a 10-year retrospective on Morbius.
Oh,
Like,
like,
how
no, it's like it's secretly the Citizen Kang of like the comic book movies.
And I see. Okay, so here's what I keep waiting for. Okay, so how we have a lot of like, how my generation, and I'm guilty of this too. There are a lot of movies that came out when I was like 10, and my generation holds up really, really high, even though they're just like okay or maybe not great
Yeah.
sometimes. I'm waiting for in the next 10 years the people who are kids now who are seeing like the Venom movies and the Morbius movies who become film buffs and they're like, no, these movies are actually great, man. And
Oh,
then
they
we have to
make
parse through
we
that.
revisit.
We have to revisit and do 45-minute YouTube retrospectives on why Venom was misunderstood.
Yeah, that's gonna happen, man. Like, cause like it's funny because like one of our episodes coming up, I think in a couple weeks, we're doing one on the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. This will be the first time we're doing
Oh,
an anniversary episode of a movie that we didn't particularly care for, because usually we're like celebrating a movie on its
oh
anniversary.
yeah.
So this is gonna be the first time that we're looking at it and being like, it's not good. But it's interesting, like to think that like with some of these movies, like 10 years from now, are you going to have this like new generation of kids who are growing up with like Venom and
Well,
and
and
its sequel
yeah,
and stuff are going to 10 years from now kind of make it like, no, you guys just didn't get it then, like it was like
well,
this was all, yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, and the reason why I say this is like we're seeing this now with the Amazing Spider-Man movies,
Yep.
where there are like tens of YouTube videos now, and I've watched a few of them, and I think a lot of them make some good points about like these movies were not as bad as people said, or like they had underappreciated qualities, and I agree with that. I think both of them had things that were kind of underlooked. But it's just interesting to see, like, oh, people who were 10 and Andrew Garfield was the first Spider-Man they saw, they
Yeah.
feel about him the way I do about Tobey Maguire because he was the first Spider-Man that I saw. And
Right.
they had that special connection with him and this universe and these versions of these characters. So it's always interesting to see, like, how the pop culture wheel turns around and the discourse shifts on
Yep.
certain movies.
Yeah, it certainly turns, like sometimes it turns within like a year or two.
Well, no,
it
it doesn't. And
sometimes,
now it's like, yeah, and now we've got like people who are like John Carter is a classic, and I'm like, okay,
you're like, cool,
uh,
there's, you know what,
cool,
there's something for
man.
everyone, there's something for everyone,
Well, no, no, there is, and that's the thing, like, because I hadn't seen it since 2012,
Yeah.
and I've tried to watch it, and I'm like, it's good until it goes to Mars.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
But
Yeah,
for
it's,
me, I mean, I'll I'll give it a full look and like a whatever, but it's like I'm not really looking forward to it. I'm like,
yeah.
hopefully I find something, but Taylor Kitsch was just not. He didn't have it. He didn't take for whatever reason. And
Yeah, what's funny about him is that he has some anniversary movies coming up. He has Battleship in May.
oh,
That'll be 10.
oh,
And then
oh boy,
he has
I saw,
Savages in July. That'll
I,
be 10. And
I,
Savages is like
I
a bit
saw,
better. That's a bit better than
I
like, Battleship.
I saw Battle. You know what? I distinctly remember seeing Battleship in theaters with my friend back in high school when that came out. Because like he's a big like military Navy guy, and so he's into those kind of movies.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'll see it because Liam Neeson's in it. And then I'm sitting there going like, Liam Neeson's barely in this, isn't he?
Yeah. Yep.
And then like, and the thing, like, I distinctly remember going like, wow, it's been a half an hour and we're still developing characters. I'm into that. And it's like I was so much more my tastes have changed over the years. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be like, wow. I'm not going to be like, thank you for giving me some kind of character development, whatever it is. I'm
Yeah.
like, is it any? I think Battleship is okay, but it's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, let's pop that on. I'm like, go watch it.
Yeah. I haven't watched it so long.
Occasionally.
I think it had the misfortune of opening the third weekend of the Avengers, which is like it just
Oh yeah,
it got lost in the
it
shuffle.
got well, it got buried, man. Like
Yeah,
even worse, like Dark Shadows opened on the same weekend as the Avengers, I think,
yeah. It's
and
like
that that got crushed.
yeah, I don't think people
I,
understood because we're covering that movie too for its anniversary, and I was like, I don't think people quite understood what Marvel had, even though they had successes. I don't think they realized how big that movie was going to be, which is why they were like, oh yeah, let's just open our
no,
stuff around it.
let's
Um,
open the
yeah,
Dark Shadows
yeah,
60s, and
and
Dark Shadows also had like missing marketing going on. Like they made it look too goofy when it's a parody, but it's not Beetlejuice goofy.
right, exactly.
And then I'm a big Tim Burton fan. I own almost all his movies, including
No,
that one. So I get what it's doing, but I understand why it failed. It's like you
right,
mismarketed this so
exactly.
heavily.
Well, I'm going to. I hate that this is like always like this is like a really fun part of our Mondays in general. Like when I do this with Owen and
Yeah,
like we have other people on, it's just always fun to kind of talk this kind of stuff and like talk to other
yeah,
fans and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you being on also at the last minute. And like I said, like all your stuff, your Twitter, your Facebook, your blog, we are going to have those all linked in the description of this episode so people can check you out
yep,
and discover your stuff. And as always, this is a playlist original. You can find us on anywhere you get your podcast fix, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. The Good Pods HQ app is where a lot of people have been discovering the podcast because it's a good place for like indie podcasters to get discovered. But wherever you choose to listen to us, we hope you subscribe, rate, listen, review. Like we want good feedback, we want negative feedback, whatever you think we can do better and what can you improve on. We're willing to listen, and we've just been really happy with, especially the last few episodes have flowed really well, and we're kind of hitting our stride. So we're all happy with everyone for listening. Kevin, once again, thank you for being on and
yeah.
offering your
Thank you for
insight.
having me.
And it's
Yes,
been real,
absolutely.
guys. Peace out, everybody.